third of our 4-week series on virtualization in healthcare. I'm your host for today, Valerie Longo, Marketing Coordinator here at Centrinet, and I am here today with our presenter, Dan Palmer of AppSense. Just a few quick housekeeping notes before we get started. We'll be answering questions at the end of the session. If you have any questions during the presentation, please use the question box in your GoToWebinar control panel. And we are recording today's webinar, so it will be up on our website later today if you have anybody else that you think should be seeing this. And with that, I will hand the presentation over to Dan.
Great. Thanks so much, Valerie. Good morning, everybody, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dan Palmer, like Valerie said, and today I'm going to be talking to you about user virtualization within the healthcare space. I've spent over a decade working at healthcare organizations around the United States, dealing with the challenges not only with virtualizing OSs or virtualizing applications, but basically making sure that the users had all of their settings and configurations for each one of their medical applications, regardless of how they were logging into the environment. It could be their desktop, it could be their laptop, it could be a thin client, it could even be virtual VDI desktops, or even streamed applications or published applications. There's a lot of challenges there within that environment. With AppSense, we basically say we eliminate the user's profiles. Over time, everybody that's been an administrator in the IT arena has basically had challenges with the user's profile. We attempted to do roaming profiles, and we got tired of the corruptions and the profiles not working correctly. So we would, find products on the internet that would kind of help us manage those roaming profiles a little bit more efficiently. But it still wasn't enough to basically solve the issues that we were having with corruption and users not being 100% satisfied. So AppSense developed a solution about 12 years ago. And that solution basically was to eliminate that user's profile within the environment. And today I'm going to be talking to you about user virtualization and the solution that we have in order to be able to eliminate all that. Now, I want to basically say right up front before we get into the demo, I'm going to promise, number one, I'm not going to show any PowerPoint today. We're going to do everything in a live demo environment, so you basically can see how it works and no PowerPoint slides going through the presentation, so a lot of people will like that. Number two is AppSense works in any Windows environment. No matter how many presentations I do, I always get asked at the end of the presentation, will this work in my physical environment? Yes, it will. Will this work in my virtual environment? Yes, it will. No matter how the OS is delivered and no matter how the application is delivered within your environment, AppSense will be able to manage that user regardless of how they're logging onto the system. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. I have several virtual environments that I have set up and a physical environment set up in the environment. I'm going to kind of show you what it actually looks like in a typical example, maybe within the environment without AppSense running this. Now, throughout the presentation, I'm going to kind of throw in some medical scenarios that maybe this happens within the healthcare environments in your environment. Some may apply to hospitals, and some may apply to, medical companies or, scanning companies that are out there. But in the nutshell, remember, this works in all companies in all environments that run Windows. So with that being said, I'm logged in here to a Windows XP environment. If I click on Start, pretty much the Start menu, and I have a demo user number 1 that's logged in here, and pretty much they have access to whatever they want and to be able to do what they need to do in the environment. But if they come over here, they have a virtual application. I have AppV running on this box as well. But if they go and launch, let's say Microsoft Office Word, we'll just say Word here. When they launch Word, they've decided to personalize Word with a little gray background, and it opens up in this look and feel in this environment. Well, if I close out this application and I go from an XP environment and then I go over to, let's say, my Windows 7 environment, same thing, a little bit different look and feel. They have a couple other icons that are on the desktop that are different from the XP environment. And when they come down here and they go to launch, let's say, Word 2007, it opens up with a slightly different look and feel, a little black background, and it has the grid lines enabled on that. And if they were to make changes within that environment, move it around the screen, let me grab it there, but move it around the, not let me grab it. So we, resize it, kind of drag it over here a little bit, so maybe I can, there we go, allows me to move it. And I close it out. If I go from Windows 7 over to Windows XP again, and I go to open it, let's open it here, Again, the changes don't persist. Maybe it's because I'm not running a roaming profile, I'm just running a local profile. Now, this is typically how companies set up their environments, so they don't want to deal with the issues with roaming. Well, AppSense allows us to capture that information, and the nice part about it is we're not storing this information within app data. We're not storing this within the local profile. We're storing this in what we call is user personalization. The information is streamed down to the user when they launch the application. Now, I don't want anybody to mistake and think that we're streaming applications. We're not streaming the OS. We're not streaming the applications. We're streaming the settings that actually apply to the user's applications when they go to launch it. So what I'm going to do here, notice the stuff that's on the desktop, and we're all probably familiar with this, how to configure GPOs, learning how to do all that, how to script, because a lot of these things that I'm going to show you, you're going to need to know all about that in order to do it without AppSense. And with AppSense, you don't need to know any of that information. So I'm going to log off of this environment here real quickly, and I'm going to go over to my Windows 7 as well, and I'm going to log off that environment. Give it just a second to log off, and then we'll log back in. I'm going to change this on because I actually have our system turned on using with my user 2 that's logged into the environment. So we'll get logged in there, come back over to my Windows 7 so we can log in at the same time, change my users. Take me just a second. There we go. So we'll get logged in there. And so come back over to my XP environment. So now that we're logged in, notice the user has a little bit more cleaned up environment. I basically set some actions within my console, which I'll show you here shortly, that basically said move some documents around, put some icons on the desktop of things that they normally do, and redirect some information. So I redirected their My Documents to the network. So I have accounting here, and I have all their how to configure GPOs, how to script, and their iTunes folders, that are actually on the network. As well as when I come in here and I launch Microsoft Word, when Word opens up, now we have a persistent look to the environment. It has a black background. And if we minimize it, let's say down to the desktop a little bit, and let's put it in the center of the screen, and we close it out, we go from Windows XP, now let's go over to Windows 7, same look and feel. So we went from XP to Windows 7, even from 32 to 64-bit in that environment, completely cleaned up, as well as when we go to launch Microsoft Word, it opens up in the exact same look and feel as it did in the other environment. Now, if you notice something, with roaming profiles, in order to store all that information, you actually have to log off of that environment so that profile can be uploaded to a network share. Notice what I have done, I haven't logged off at all during the changing of the applications once we turned AppSense on. So the user, as fast as they can make changes, we'll come over here and let's put some grid lines in there, and we'll close out the application. The data is already saved within a back-end SQL database, and we always get the question, does this work online and offline? The answer is yes. So if you have traveling individuals, doctors, clinicians, and things like that, the answer is yes, it will work just fine. We go to launch Microsoft Word over here. Again, same look and feel. Let's take it to the next step. Each one of the applications that I've launched, both of the Words, have been installed locally on that environment. I'm going to close out of the Word here onto the desktop, and I'm going to launch an AppV application. So I come over to AppV, and I launch Word using stream technology. So you can see it's actually loading, and when it launches, I forgot to do my license, apologize for that, but you can see it launches with the exact same settings, black background, and grid lines onto the desktop as it did when I launched it locally. So no matter how the app is delivered, no matter where the OS comes from, and again, I'll move this up over here, close it out, and we'll launch the local version. You can see it's stopping AppV over here. If I go to launch Microsoft Word locally, it opens up in that same place. Now, one of the things that challenges within profiles that are out there is being able to manage corruption. Now, I'm just going to kind of symbolize corruption here. I'm going to open it up to a look and feel to where the user can't use the product. There's an error, there's a problem with the program, whatever. And again, this is any application, whether you all develop the application in-house in the hospitals or the medical agencies, or whether this was developed by Microsoft or Adobe or somebody else. So let's close out the application and do what normally a typical user would do. They would open up the application again. When the application launches, it still doesn't work. Then they'll reboot the system, then they'll log off, log back in, and eventually they'll call the help desk. The help desk will ask them what their problem is. They'll tell them it's a problem with Word. Then they'll ask them, how is you launching Word? Are you launching through a local desktop? Are you launching it through Citrix, a published application? wherever they're launching it from, that's who they're going to assign the problem